Elmore Leonard is here. He is the author of numerous best-selling novels, including Be Cool, Out of Sight, and Get Shorty. Known for his dead-on dialogue and razor-sharp wit, Leonard has been praised by the New York Times as the greatest crime writer of our time. His new book is called When the Women Come Out to Dance. It is his first collection of short stories and the first time that one of his works has been adapted for the stage. I am pleased to have him back at this table for, what, the 10th time, you think?
I would say about that.
I would say about that. I mean, I'm pretty good about getting you in front of America.
You've been a pal.
Pal is what I would say too.
Yeah.
Now, why did you decide to do this collection of short stories?
Well, they were available, and I thought, well, I'll do a few more, and it'll become a book size, and that'll be part of the contract then with HarperCollins. And there are several stories in there that I didn't think had gotten enough attention up till now, and this would be a good opportunity.
There are some people who say that you've created your most compelling female characters here.
Well, I think, you see, one of the short stories was, for example, Karen Makes Out, was a test. I tested Karen in that situation to see if she would work in a book.
This is Karen Cisco of Out of Sight.
Of Out of Sight. Charlie Hoke becomes a character in Tishomingo Blues.
Right.
And I find out if they can talk or not. Give them a little an audition. It's like an audition.
You actually said that Tishomingo Blues was your favorite book of all time.
I did.
And you still believe that?
Well, it's up there with Freaky Deaky.
Freaky Deaky. That's one of my faves.
So, I think my women in the last few books, well, I'd say in the last dozen books, have been very strong characters, and I have been leaning more toward making the women more important, and they turn out to be more intelligent than the men, and even funnier, more interesting, and so therefore that their roles become more important.
A lot of people say that great writers never let their technique show. Does your technique show?
Well, I say that my style is the absence of style, and yet it is obvious, because people say they can tell by reading a passage that I wrote it. I mean, when they read one of my books, they know it's my book and not someone else's book.
Is that good?
Sure. I think it's good.
Yeah, because it has a certain style, a certain zing.
Because it has a certain sound, whether it's a zing or... I think of style as sound, and this comes out of attitude. It's my attitude toward the characters in letting the characters tell the story, letting the characters, each scene is seen from a character's point of view.
Your friend Martin Amis says that you pushed the novel, the narrative in your novels, and that it is characters rather than the language that drives the narrative.
Well, it's the language of the character. It's the language that makes the character. And this is something I learned back in 1954 in the prologue of Steinbeck's Sweet Thursday. And in the prologue, a character from Cannery Row says, "Yeah, I like that book, okay, but I didn't like the way the author's always describing what people look like. I don't want to know what people look like. I don't want him telling me what they look like. I want to learn from the way they talk and what they do, what they look like." And I've never forgotten that, because I would certainly rather do it that way than have to try and describe characters, because I think more often than not characters are described far too much in detail in novels. That the little physical characteristics that you don't remember.
Well, unless somebody has you can be. I would disagree on this point. You can be so brilliant at the way you do that. I mean, it can be your long suit.
Exactly. And you can.
Yes. Somebody like that can set a scene, and they have such a capacity to recreate a scene. They see everything, that it makes it more vibrant.
Well, that's true. I've said, for example, one of my rules is never open a book with the weather. Well, but there are certain writers who can describe all the weather they want. you know, because they're good at it.
Yeah.
They can do weather reports.
You're talking about this to every since you brought this up, I'm going to pick at some of these other things. Number 2 is how to avoid prologues. Avoid prologues.
Avoid prologues, except in the case of Steinbeck, where he gave me all that valuable information in his prologue.
You say a prologue in a novel is a backstory, and you drop it in anywhere you want, but not at the beginning. But you say no. You just say avoid them.
Avoid them, because a prologue is, you open the book and say a prologue. Oh, do I have to read the prologue? Why can't I just get into the story?
Yeah. Never use a verb other than said to carry dialogue. Now, what would be an example of a verb you would use to carry a dialogue other than said?
I'm not sure if I'm going or not, she asseverated.
Yeah. Or she ad-libbed,
Or, yeah, right.
She reflected.
Yeah,
What was the word you used?
asseverated.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure, I've forgotten, but I had, Mary McCarthy used it, and I had to look it up. If you have to look up the verb, you know that you're looking up words all through that book.
You say never use an adverb to modify the verb said.
Never.
Never say, for example, he admonished gravely.
Never. Never. He admonished. That's enough.
Right, me too. I'm with you on this. You could write for me.
What do you pay?
Not as much as you make. Never use the word suddenly or all hell broke loose.
Yes, and you see those all the time. Now, you don't have to explain those.
All right.
You know.
Number 7, use regional dialect sparingly.
Did you skip exclamation points?
No, I skipped patas.
Hmm?
No, I skipped, how do I pronounce this? P-A-T-O-I-S.
Patois.
Patois. Okay. Basically, the rule is use regional dialect patois sparingly.
Well, you don't want the book, if you use dialect, your page is all full of apostrophes, you know, where you're leaving out letters and things, or you're spelling phonetically, and it looks funny. You've got to use that sparingly.
Avoid detailed descriptions of characters. We've talked about this a little bit, but
Unless
what?
Unless you're
Hemingway.
He doesn't
I know
see
it's
that
true.
he
It's a
didn't.
perfect example, right?
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of the rule. Avoid detailed descriptions.
Exactly. Go on.
All right. Don't go into great detail describing places and things.
Unless
You're Margaret Atwood.
Yeah.
And this is my point. I've already made this point.
Yeah.
And can paint scenes with language or write landscapes in the style of Jim Harrison.
Yeah.
But even if you're good at it, you don't want descriptions that bring the action, the flow of the story to a standstill. Okay. Let me go back to avoid detailed descriptions of characters. Steinbeck covered. In Ernest Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants, what do the American and the girl with him look like? She had taken off her hat and put it on the table. That's the quote. That's the only reference to a physical description in the story, and yet we see the couple and know them by their tone of voice, with not one adverb in sight. Right out of your mouth. Amen. All right. Number 10.
What about exclamation points?
I don't see that.
That couldn't have been left out.
No, I made a mistake or somewhere. I don't know where it is. But you explain it to me then.
Well, exclamation points are often used. The exclaimer is put when the sentence isn't exclaiming anything. It's just that the writer, I think, gets a little heated, a little excited about it, and he puts in the exclamation point. But I say that you're allowed maybe 3 per 100,000 words when you're writing a book, unless you're Tom Wolfe. Then you can throw them in for fun.
Why, unless you're Tom Wolfe?
Because Tom Wolfe knows how to use them for fun.
For fun, right, okay.
Yeah.
Try to leave out the part that readers tend to skip.
Yes.
If you know that the reader's going to skip it, don't put it in.
Exactly. And I came across that one in a crossword puzzle.
Yeah.
In USA Today, and it said, begin Elmore Leonard quote here. And I thought, well, what? What could it be? Until I got I try, and then I knew what it was, of course. That's my oldest rule. Try to leave out the parts that readers tend to skip.
There's one more. and you say this is my most important rule, and it sums up all of the 10. What is it?
If it sounds like writing, I rewrite it.
Yes!
Yeah.
That's true.
I don't, and what I'm referring to the way we were taught to write, by putting the dependent sentence clause first, like upon entering the room, he noticed that. That to me is just writing.
Some of the reviewers, like Kirkus, they liked the short stories better than the novellas. Do you?
You mean in general?
No, here.
Oh, in here?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because the 2 of these are longer than the rest.
Right, yeah. Well, that's okay. It's what can I say? I'll tell you, you know what my favorite one is The Tonto Woman.
Really?
And I wrote it 10 years ago.
Why is that your favorite?
I just like it.
It recounts a rustler's determined courtship of a landowner's.
Well, do you think that's what it's about?
No. What is it about?
It's about a rustler's courtship of a but that's not what it's about.
What's it about?
Well, here this Mexican rustler, and in the first scene he goes to confession. It's the first time in 20 years he's gone to confession, and he says, "Oh, I've stolen 5,000 horses and so many, all this is get this all off his chest." All right. Then he goes out toward the herd, and he sees this woman, who must be living in this lion shack out on this very empty prairie out there. And he sees her come out to the pump, and she's washing herself. And she has a suspicion that she's being watched. Then he comes in to get a drink of water. And she's in the doorway with a gun. And there's something strange about her. And she's tattooed on her face with blue lines. Blue lines because she had been captured by Tano Mojaves and sold to them by another tribe as a slave. And they tattooed her so that she would look like one of them.
Yeah.
And when she was finally saved and returned to the home, her husband puts her out in this lion shack to live. And she doesn't want to see anybody because because of these blue lines on her face. See? But this Mexican drover, he says, "Hey, come on." He buys her a new hat and a dress, and he takes her into town so that she can become herself again. There's a little action in it, but not any shooting. But I think it's a good story. I think it could be a movie.
Okay, why did you choose this one for the cover and for the title, When the Women Come Out to Dance?
I was going to use Ten Killer, and my publisher, my editor, Marjorie Brayman, said, "I think When the Women Come Out to Dance would be a much, much more intriguing."
It's kind of a snappy title, isn't it?
Yeah, and I said, "I think you're right," and I did immediately, almost immediately.
Here you go.
There you are.
When the Women Come Out to Dance, Elmore Leonard, thank you for being with us.
Charlie, thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Always my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.